The night guard was at the security desk when the intercom buzzer sounded. On the camera monitor, two men stood at the employee entrance in police uniforms, close enough that they looked like partners on a routine call. One leaned in and said they were responding to a disturbance. The guard knew the museum's after-hours rule. No one came in without a supervisor confirming it. But the word police carries weight, and the guard didn't want to be the reason something went unchecked inside the building. He pressed the release and let them through the employee entrance, a single decision that opened the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum to a theft that would become a national obsession. Once inside, the men moved with easy authority. They spoke like they belonged there. They told the guard to step away from the desk. They asked for identification. Then one of them said there was a warrant out for the guard's arrest. The statement didn't come with paperwork or explanation. It came like a command, and in the second, the guard paused, confused, embarrassed, trying to understand. Hands were already on him. Cold metal cuffs closed around his wrists, and the desk he'd been watching a moment ago became something he couldn't reach. A second security guard soon appeared in the lobby, drawn by voices and the unexpected visitors at the desk. He took in the uniforms, the posture, the tone that suggested everything was official. Before he could make sense of it, he was being handled the same way, moved, restrained, pulled into the thieves' control. Both guards were led down into the basement and left there, immobilized and unable to see what the cameras were seeing. Above them, motion detectors began to log movement as the thieves made their way into the galleries. Those alerts, silent signals, became a record of the crime in progress. Two men walking through rooms that should have been empty, crossing thresholds meant to be protected by routine and by trust. They didn't rush like people afraid of being caught. They moved like men who believed they had time. They went straight to the second-floor Dutch room, where some of the museum's best-known works hung in place, arranged to match Isabella Stewart Gardner's own careful vision. In that room, the collection wasn't meant to feel like a rotating exhibit. It was meant to feel permanent. The thieves targeted the paintings that would be instantly recognizable to anyone who knew the collection. They cut Rembrandt's Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee from its frame. They cut another Rembrandt, a lady and gentleman in black, from its frame as well. They removed Vermeer's The Concert from its frame. They removed Govert Flink's landscape with an obelisk from its frame. The work wasn't gentle. Frames were damaged and cast aside, left hanging empty or abandoned on the floor, a brutal kind of tidiness, the valuables gone, the borders left behind. They didn't stop with the largest canvases. In the same room, they lifted smaller objects that could vanish without leaving splinters or torn canvas edges. They pulled an ancient Chinese bronze gu, a beaker that had sat on a table, then carried it away like ordinary property. They took a small Rembrandt self-portrait etching from the side of a chest and removed it from its frame. Each choice suggested familiarity, not impulse. It looked like a list being checked off, item by item, by people who knew where everything was supposed to be. Then they shifted into the short gallery, the passageway leading toward the tapestry room, where works on paper were stored in cabinets. Drawers that were meant to be opened by staff hands were opened by gloved hands instead. They took 5 pieces by Edgar Degas. They also took a bronze eagle finial, the ornamental eagle that had topped a flagpole linked to Napoleon's Imperial Guard, small enough to wrap and conceal while leaving the larger display behind. They didn't ignore the first floor. In the blue room, they stole Manet's Chez Tortoni and left its frame behind, another blank outline that would greet staff in the morning. The pattern repeated: remove what could be carried, leave the empty structure behind, so the theft would announce itself the moment someone walked in. Down in the basement, the guards could only listen. They heard footsteps overhead, doors opening and closing, the faint scrape of movement in a building that was supposed to be sealed. They tested the restraints until their wrists hurt, then stopped, because pain didn't buy freedom. One of them tried to keep track of time by counting sounds, by estimating how long a set of steps took to cross a room, by holding on to anything that made the situation feel measurable. But the minutes didn't behave like minutes anymore. They stretched. The theft lasted 81 minutes. Above, the motion detectors recorded where the men went and when. Below, the guards had no way to know if help was coming or if the thieves were still working. The worst part was the quiet confidence in the footsteps, the sense that whoever was moving upstairs didn't expect to be interrupted. When the men finally left, they did it without panic. They departed at 2:45 a.m., making 2 separate trips to their car with the stolen works. Then the museum went quiet again, as if the building itself had returned to its normal posture and was trying to pretend nothing had happened. The guards remained handcuffed in the basement for hours. No patrol came through. No supervisor arrived to check in. It was morning before police finally got there, 8:15 a.m., and only then were the guards freed. By then, the damage was complete. When investigators and staff walked the galleries, what hit first was the absence. In the Dutch room, gilded frames hung empty on the walls where Vermeer and Rembrandt had been, and other frames had been left behind after their paintings were cut or removed. In other rooms, objects that had always been there were simply gone. The museum didn't look ransacked in the way people imagine a robbery. It looked selectively emptied, the way a room looks after a careful thief takes only what matters and leaves the rest untouched. The scale of what was missing became clear as the list settled. 13 works taken in one night, including the Rembrandts, the Vermeer, the Manet, the Degas pieces, the ancient bronze beaker, the eagle finial, and the small self-portrait etching. The theft would be described by federal investigators as the largest property crime in U.S. history, with the missing art valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. Years turned into decades. The case stayed open. The museum kept working with investigators, kept asking for information, kept offering a reward for the return of the stolen works, even offering a separate reward for information tied specifically to the Napoleonic eagle finial. The paintings and objects did not come back. The empty frames remained. By the mid-1990s, the museum chose to keep them on the walls as a permanent reminder of what had been taken and what was still being sought. Visitors began to stand in front of those frames and stare at the shape of what wasn't there, learning the story the way people learn about an unsolved murder, through what's missing, through what can't be replaced, through the unanswered question of where it went. All of it began with 2 men in police uniforms at a door and a guard trying to do what felt reasonable in the moment. The crime that followed was quiet, controlled, and devastatingly efficient. 13 works removed from a Boston museum, while the people responsible for protecting it lay restrained in the basement, waiting for a morning that came far too late. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.